This is Business Bootcamp Week 7, and it's called Delegating or Delegation. And the reason why I have this image in the background is because of you, sometimes you can be the bottleneck of your own operation. So the goal today is to help you learn how to let go, how to feel that you're in control without being in control all the time. And this is going to be the way that you're going to propel your company forward. Okay, so belief. This is where I think we need to tackle some things. And Ben and Matthew, I'm going to encourage you guys to participate in this. I need your help here because I want to have more of a conversation about this. So the first idea is about authorship, that you, to feel right, to feel ethical, to feel whole with yourself, have to have your hands in everything. So you got to get your tentacles in everything. And Ben, we want to talk about this a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Early on when you and I were talking, and I was trying to help you grow your business, what were your feelings around having to author everything yourself?
Yeah, I felt like I wouldn't be able to put it in my portfolio, that it wasn't going to come from me, and that I would be misrepresenting myself, and it would almost be unethical for me to outsource the actual work, the design, to somebody else. So I had this weird connection to, I needed to do the work myself in order to come from my company, to put my stamp on it.
So if we're going to apply overcoming objections, and if you were to say, like if a client were to come to you and to say, it's very important for me to do all the work myself, how could you use one of the strategies to challenge your own limiting belief?
Oh man, put me on the spot.
This is totally unrehearsed, guys. This is how this works.
So probably, does every successful designer do all the work themselves? Does every successful design shop do all the work themselves? And obviously the answer would be no.
That's a good one. And I can think of an example myself when we go to restaurants. Ben, you and myself, no, was it you and me? No, I'm sorry. I was in Las Vegas, and I was there with Mark and Aaron, and we went to Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay's famous place based on the TV show. And the whole thing is a recreation of a TV set. And the idea that Gordon Ramsay would actually be on the line expediting, I'm not sure anybody would walk into the restaurant thinking that. So we readily accept that the person who founded Starbucks isn't making your coffee, the person who founded Chipotle isn't still cooking your food. But for some reason, we still hold on to this idea that we, as the proprietor, as the founder of our own company, have to be the ones that are on the line making the thing. Otherwise, we feel inauthentic, we feel disingenuous. And I think we have to get over that idea. Every successful company, the person who founded the company, the person who runs the company, isn't the person who's making the tacos or designing the logo anymore. They move into a management position. They're responsible for strategy and for leadership and much more important things. And so that's the first thing that we got to get over. And I was reading this book, and we're talking about the reason why we don't do this is because we fear that losing part of the job diminishes our own personal importance. Like we can't claim that the work is ours anymore. And this is the wrong mentality, because this is too much focus on the I versus the we, the me versus the team. The next idea that we want to talk about is, can you afford it? When we're talking about delegating, it implies that we're going to hire people, we're going to bring people into our stable, whether on a freelance basis or on a staff basis, that doesn't matter. And there's always this concern, like, can we afford it? I think the more important question is, can we afford not to? And what's at stake if we don't? Okay. So one thing that we need to know, or a belief that we have, is it's more cost effective for you to do the work yourself, because no one can do the task as quickly or as efficiently as you. And I want to get into this in a little bit, but this is a very commonly held belief. Another one is that the delegate, the person that we give the work to, will perform badly. So we already enter into it with the expectation that may be unrealistic, that they need to do the work as well as you, as fast as you, and as efficiently as you, and yet not cost as much as you do. And that's an idea that's going to be holding you back, and we got to get over that one. And lastly, it'll take you longer to delegate than to do the task yourself. While this is true in the very beginning, after you delegate, and if you do this properly, your team will grow and learn and develop new skills, so that over time, it will require less and less of your input, and they will grow and your team will grow. And if we look at the structure of Blind itself, many people often will ask me, Chris, how often are you doing the work yourself? And as Matthew and Ben will testify, is I barely get involved in projects, even on the high level when we're talking to clients. It's a rare moon that I'm pulled into it. And my belief isn't so much that I'm lazy or I'm trying to escape responsibility, but I need to create space for both Matthew, Ben, and the rest of the team to grow and to fill those shoes. But I'm not sending them off to the wolves. I'm giving them support. We're constantly talking to each other, comparing notes, and coaching each other up, which is fantastic. And that's how we're able to grow our company. So a lot of this comes from having a level of uncertainty and from that scarcity mindset that we don't want to give work away because we're not quite sure when the new work is going to come in. So we want to hoard the money and the resources because we're scared that nothing else will come in. So one way that we can address this is to figure out what a worry date is. Okay, what is our worry date? Okay, so the worry date looks something like this. And it looks like a fun little formula. It's R over E minus 1 equals WD. And I'll tell you what each one of these things stands for. R is your revenue, and it's accounts receivable, the things that people are going to pay you for, awarded projects, and any savings that you have. If you were to add all that stuff up. So if you were just awarded a project and you haven't yet invoiced anything, all your invoices, outstanding, current due, past due, whatever, plus all the money you have in the bank, that's your total revenue. And E equals your expenses. So this is accounts payable, checks that you need to write, invoices that you've received from a vendor, not invoices you've sent out, overhead, salary and wages, insurance, all that kind of stuff, everything that's going out every single month. And the way you look at this is, if no new work were to come in, what would your expenses be? And add that up per month. Okay, so then you divide your revenue minus your expenses. So if you say are bringing in $5,000, if you have $5,000 in your account and outstanding invoices and your monthly overhead expenses is 1,000, the 5 divided by 1,000 would equal 5. And I'm doing this on purpose to make the math super easy for myself. It's early in the morning here. And then you would minus 1. And that would tell you how many months you have to work worry-free. And that's the worry date. So if you have 4 months that you don't have to worry about getting any new work, that's a pretty good runway. And when that 4-month marker hits, you set it in your calendar, you basically have 1 more month to survive. Otherwise, you'll go out of business. And then you will have to take drastic steps or measures in order to course correct before you actually truly go out of business. And this is taken from Michael Janda's book, Burn Your Portfolio. And I'll include it in the resources after the show, okay, or after this episode. Anyways, so here's what we have to kind of look at. If your worry date is less than 3 months, this is kind of where it gets a little sketchy. You want to have 3 months or more, and this will give you some sense of financial security. Sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll have 1 month, meaning by the end of the month, they're not sure if they'll still be in business because they might be bankrupt. That's a bad place to be. I've also spoken to people that I've consulted for that they have more than a year in terms of their worry date. So they've done a really good job of minimizing the expenditures while keeping most of the money saved up. So they have a pretty good and healthy war chest. But I want to let you know that even if your worry date is less than 3 months, that it's not, you don't need to panic. It's just to let you know a kind of more quantifiable date and time in which you have to worry about something. Otherwise, some people walk around thinking they're going to go out of business every single day, even though their worry date is many months into the future. Another tip that I want to share with you is to get a line of credit. And many of you guys don't know what this is. This is the time to start building a relationship with your banker. I have one, and we have, I think, a couple $100,000 worth of a line of credit. And just to give you a brief explanation, because I struggled understanding this myself, a line of credit is nothing more than this, is that the bank sets aside a set amount of money that you can draw down and you have to pay back every single month. The idea, and a set interest rate too. And the idea is that if you're invoicing and your clients are slow to pay, you might not be able to cover payroll. And it's used not to buy equipment, because that's for financing and leasing. This is purely to kind of help you with cash flow. Money is supposed to be coming in, but the client is past due on their invoices. So start a relationship with your banker, believe it or not. That's how you know you're an adult. You have a relationship with a banker and get a line of credit set up. Section 2, the benefits of delegation. We're going to get into this a little bit. Okay, so what's the cost of not delegating? And I have a worksheet that you and Matthew and Ben will do which is to calculate what you are worth. What's your worth, okay? So if you're in, I believe that the demographic of this group is kind of split. There's a good chunk of you guys that are in the web design and digital space. And the other chunk is in motion graphics, animation, and post-production. There's a couple of you guys that overlap into the design and branding space. And so if you were to take a look at this and look at the job, and I'm going to assume right now that you're a solopreneur, that you still have some hurdles to get over in terms of delegating work out, write down all the different job functions that you have as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur. And that might include business development, project management, art direction / creative direction, visual design, animation, compositing, post-production, editing. Just list down as many functions and roles as you can. And then you would do that, okay? And then you would type in what the hourly rate is. What is the fair market value of paying another human being to do that task for you? You're going to soon realize what tasks are really important and which ones really need your attention. I did this with Ben and Matthew the other day, and I just assigned some dollar values to it, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. And this is the true cost of not delegating. So for the purposes of this scenario, I've decided to include, how many is that? 6 categories of roles. There could be more, but 6 seems to be a good way to show this. And they're all built on hourly rates, and the only thing that's not is the development. So this is for a digital project. So for a digital project, we need to do biz dev and sales. We need to do strategy / UX, visual design, copywriting, project management, and development. So they're all set against an hourly rate, and with the exception of the development, because usually those are fixed fee bids that we pay out to. We don't do development ourselves in-house. So I've assigned a rate here. So what I do is then I subtract every rate against the most expensive rate. Presuming that you're doing this all yourself, you're going to start to quickly realize when you do the job of somebody who gets paid $25 an hour, you're costing the company and yourself a deficit of $125 an hour. And then you multiply that by 40, and then you realize what it's costing you per week. And then you multiply that by 52, presumably if you're working all year long, 52 weeks in a year, and then I added all that up at the bottom. So if you were out there and you could bill $150 an hour and you're doing the work of a project manager, or maybe you're just helping to clean up the office or pick up office supplies, you're costing the company quite a lot of money as it's spread out across the year. So this will quickly help you realize what's at stake. Okay, so look at that number right there, $811,000 over the course of a year. This is what you're costing your company. Now, my business coach, Kieran McLaren, made me do this exercise to help me realize that I should not be doing tasks that other people can do. And there's a good reason. It's not just about your ego or about making more money, but it's also because you're not providing opportunity for other people to do those tasks. Now, imagine if you were starting out in the world and you just graduated school, but there were no positions open except for senior management positions. Where would you be today? You have to make room for other people to enter into the marketplace, and this is how a capitalistic society works, right? You make room for others to step in, they grow, company grows, the economy moves. So there's a lot of real reasons why you need to do this. So there are other things, the real cost of not delegating. We're not talking about money now, we're talking about things that are qualitative, like, for example, feeling overworked, which will lead to being burnt out. And the consequence of that is less family or personal vacation time. You're going to have a company and you're going to realize it's very slow to grow. You'll hit a ceiling really quickly because there's only so much you can do. And you're going to start to turn away work because you don't know how to give work away. And if there were a couple of people in your company, let's say 1 or 2 freelancers or full-time people, it's going to become very autocratic because you can't delegate the work to anybody. Everybody defers the decision to you. All the power centralized with you. And because you're tied up doing all this stuff, you have no free time. You can't read, you can't attend seminars and talks and workshops. You're going to start to fall into this place where you're going to lack innovation. You're not going to grow very much in terms of trying new things. And ultimately, this suffocates the team. The term pixel effer is a direct response to people who can't delegate, who want to micromanage everybody and is holding on even though they have other people in the room helping there. let's look at the other side. Let's look at some positive things. Why delegate? Well, this helps your team to develop skills, and it helps them to grow personally. There's increased time for management tasks. Those are the tasks that nobody else can do but you. So you're kind of almost escaping the things that are very important to the growth and success of your company to do the things that are not important, or less important, I should say. When you delegate, there's less stress because you're sharing the workload across the entire team, and you're tapping into the collective intelligence of the group. This allows you to grow personally and to scale your business much quicker, and to a point in which there might not be a ceiling on your growth anymore. So whereas you might have thought, I could do as much as $400,000 a year in business, now you could do 10, 20, $100 million of business because you know how to delegate and share the workload across the team to distribute it. You can also see opportunities and threats before they hit you, before it's too late. So any kind of disruptive force in the market, you're going to be able to see. And this is one of the key reasons why we've been in business for 23 years now, because I've been able to not be heads down all the time, to be able to look out at the horizon and kind of see what's coming and to make adjustments so that we don't wind up getting caught. And lastly, when you delegate, you motivate the team, because everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to take on more responsibilities. They don't want to keep doing the same thing and being stifled. So you're going to motivate the team that way. There's a simple delegation checklist. Mr. Ben Burns is a big fan of the checklist, so I've included a few for you guys to look at. So here's what we want to do. These are just taken from a book from about how to delegate. Is the task suitable for delegation? Is the delegate competent to perform the task? So those are two kind of key things. If you give a task that you can't delegate and they don't have the skill level to do it, you're setting yourselves up for failure. Will I brief them fully and correctly? This is critical. Oftentimes, we're always feeling like we're in a rush, so we don't take the proper time to sit down and to brief somebody, to have things written, and to check in with them and to get them to commit to doing the work. This is all critical for the success of delegation. Will I give them all the backup, resources, and authority to complete their tasks? There's no point to send somebody to do something for you only to have the entire team go over their head and check in with you to see if it's okay. So you got to give them more than what you think in terms of authority. But there are things that you must retain, and here they are, at least for the time being as you grow your company. One is leadership. Leadership really just means to provide the drive and stewardship for your company. That's really all it is. 2, strategy, this is critical, is establishing key targets and the means of fulfilling them. Planning for the future, whether they be short, medium, and long-term goals, must originate from the top. But success, and this is important here, depends on enlisting commitment from the entire team. 3, client relationships. This is critical to maintain key relationships with your clients. The continued success of a business is closely tied to continued good relationships with key customers. The manager, you, the owner, must never endanger these relationships by delegating ultimate responsibility for these contacts. So why was that put in there? The reason why that was put in there is that you can delegate project managers, account managers to work with the client on a day-to-day basis, but when things go wrong, you have to step in and take ultimate responsibility. You can't just point to them and say, why did you drop the ball, and throw them under the bus? Because ultimately, everybody is a reflection of you. Lastly, results. Assessing outcomes and applications of lessons learned. Set the goals in agreement with staff and monitors progress towards these goals. When targets are endangered, step in and take action. So a lot of people think you can just phone it in, tell the team to do something, and never check in again. Now, over time, as your team grows, and if you've done a good job of coaching them and supporting them, encouraging them, and course correcting when necessary, over time, you will need to do that less and less, into which a point in which the company can run almost on a level of like autopilot. And that's what you strive for. Freelance roster. So now we've gotten over the idea that we do need to delegate. We need to be able to bring on people to help us, and you can almost bring on a person right away from the very beginning. So if you just started your company and you got a project, I would suggest that you delegate. And this is going to be dependent on the team that you have. Now, many of us are reluctant to bring on freelancers because A, we don't know very many of them, or maybe they're too expensive, or we've been burned before and it's left a bad taste in our mouths. Well, not all people are alike, and not all experiences are final. So what we want to do is we need to build a freelance roster. And the idea is you need to start before you need them. So this is the stuff that we do kind of in our downtime all the time. You need to be building that roster today. And there's some places that make a lot of sense in terms of how to recruit people. The first is a recruitment fair. Schools, universities put these on all the time. They want to create the appearance that their graduates are highly employable and that they can attract relevant employers. So they put these things on, and this is where you can go to scout new talent. This is kind of what professional athletes do, or coaches and teams. They scout talent. This is what you need to do. Keep an eye on people, even though you may not have the need today. Establish a relationship, exchange business cards and information, and keep an eye on them. You never know when this is going to come in handy. Portfolio reviews are also a good place to scout talent. Universities put these on. They invite professionals to come in and review portfolios, or a professional organization. If you're in Canada, it'd be the RGD. For America, for the United States, it'd be AIGA or something equivalent to that. And believe it or not, you can actually find some decent people on Craigslist. People not necessarily within the normal circle. This has worked well for writers and maybe even developers, people that are not designers per se, but Craigslist can be a place. Industry ad. There are very relevant blogs that pertain to your industry. So if you want to have an animator, maybe you can reach out to Motionographer or one of those other websites that are heavily targeted towards motion design people. The AIGA, you can also take an ad out on the AIGA page. You can also ask people who are working with you or have worked with you for recommendations. This is critical. This is probably one of the best resources for talent, because people who are good tend to know other good people, and they are generally very selective in terms of who they recommend, because it's a reflection on their taste level. And I don't think they want to just say, well, call Mary. Never worked with Mary before. So they tend to pre-vet potential freelancers for you in a way that would save you a lot of time. So asking for recommendations is super helpful, and it saved our bacon many times when we were kind of in a pinch and needed somebody of a very specific skill set. We just asked our circle. If you speak at events, this is probably one of the easiest ways, because you just stand there and people will come up to you. If you present really good work, they're going to ask you, how do I intern for you? How do I get a job? How can I work with you? Because let's do something together. That's great. More practically though, and a more surefire way to do this, especially if you work in a remote area and you don't have access to these kinds of places or events, is to scrape Behance and Instagram. I think it's split for me in terms of people I've hired on Behance or Instagram. So if I see a lettering artist, if I see a logo designer who's really good at doing monograms or something, or animals or icons, I would just bookmark all these people, and I would start to reach out to all of them to see which ones I might be able to consider as a potential candidate for freelancing or for sending off work to. Outsourcing. If you are featured in a blog, this would help you out a lot, because this is going to get the eyeballs, grab the attention and eyeballs of a lot of designers and creatives out there. So as soon as you're featured there, if you have your contact information, if you let people know, they will come to you. And that's a great way to bring people in. Coincidentally, when Karen Fong was on our show, our live show, the live stream, she was solicited in the comments, like, how do I get a job with you guys? Because people were delighted about the work and her philosophy and her personality, because she's a fun-loving person. So I'm pretty sure Imaginary Forces picked up a few people just by having her on her show. Lastly, you can do it on your website. You can just have a permanent area called jobs or job opportunities, and just list the kinds of positions that you're looking for, and that even though you're not currently hiring, you're always outsourcing and looking for freelancers to help pitch in. So you can definitely do that. So this is where you start to collect a database. I put together some criteria, and this is just our way of doing it. You can do it any which way you want, but this is the bare minimum that you need. And I just put it together here just to illustrate one point here for you. Of course, you need the name. You need to know what their job function is. You can also add a secondary job function. This is why it's very critical, if you're a freelancer, to make sure it's very clear what it is that you do. Generalists are hard to kind of put into a category. They tend to be forgotten. with a couple exceptions. If you're a really good 3D generalist, we love those kinds of people. So it's very clear, Matt Painter, any kind of notes, if they have specific projects they've worked on, styles, any kind of thing that will make it much easier for you to find these people again, any kind of metadata would be helpful for you, especially when you ask a project manager to search for a particular type of person. At least they have some data so that they're not looking at it blindly. You don't want to store all of this in your brain. Of course, you need to write down the rate, if it's hourly, if it's project-based, if it's a day rate, etc. And we like to give our freelancers a 1 to 3 star rating. It could be 1 to 5. 1 star does not mean that they're bad. Anybody that we would not consider hiring don't even make it on the list. There's no point to fill up the list with junky names. Okay, so it's just the degree, so that if we see 2 people, one's a $600 a day person and it gets 3 stars, and one that's $450 a day, we kind of have to find within ourselves, like, is it worth the extra money? Do they do that much better work? And oftentimes it is. The people who charge more actually do much better work and work much faster. It's something that you need to keep in mind. Of course, you need to include their contact information and a link to their portfolio or relevant work samples. As a bonus, I tend to attach clips or thumbnails of their work so that I can easily browse and say, that's the person I was thinking of. Let's bring that person in. So when you find these people and you're thinking about working with them, there are some questions that you might want to ask them ahead of time. And this is just to think about what it might be like to work with them. So I like to ask some open-ended questions and let people say whatever it is that they want. This will give you a sense of their communication style, how confident they are, etc., so that you know sometimes the rates are inflated or maybe they're undervalued. Who knows? But that's where the conversation can help. So some simple questions that you can ask. How do you like to work? Tell me more about your process. So this can go down a very, very stereotypical formula. I like to produce some things on my own and then present you the first round and get your feedback and then go away and do something and come back. And you're allowed to make as many changes as you want. Or I'm only looking for a few comments, like I like it or I don't like it, and we have 2 shots to get it right. At any rate, you need to know how they like to work. This is important because you're trying to find that fit in the way that they work and the way that you like to work. Of course, you need to know the very pedantic stuff, like what are your rates, how do you structure fees and payments, what are your terms, etc. Next up are expectations and timeline. So a lot of the questions have been focused on what they do. What are their expectations about how I should work? Do you want me to set up a Dropbox account, a Trello with all the assets? Do you want me to do a video briefing, or can I give you a document, or do you prefer Skype conversation? How is this going to work? Lastly, this is very critical to talk about too. If everything is going well, you need to know these things from them. If they're cool with basically working as a work for hire, which means you own the content, there's no licensing, you own it outright. All the materials that they produce are your property. Not the intellectual properties that they think about outside, but just the things that they produce in pursuit or in service of the job that you've hired them for. So things like a non-compete, non-solicitation, so they're not going to talk to your clients and solicit them for work. And if you feel like you can't trust them, don't even hire them. Do not hire them at all, okay? Then there's issues about non-disclosure. That's why you need to have them sign an NDA. And basically a work for hire contract should cover this. This should be in the legal kit that we are sharing with you guys. The brief needs to be brief. So let's get into it. So the purpose of a brief, and I want you to listen to this particular module and keep in mind that this is what we're going to share with our team. But then you quickly realize if you don't have this information yourself, how can you share this? So this is one of those ones where it has to work both sides, where you're talking to the client and you're extracting information from them, and then you're passing this along to whoever you're working with, the delegate, okay? So what we want to do is say, like, in the world of possible solutions, there's an infinite number of things that we can do. And before I learned how to do this properly, how to ask questions and to kind of figure out what the problem is that we're trying to solve, we would come back oftentimes in pitches with 7, 8, 12 different explorations, and it all felt like they were viable solutions. And the truth is they weren't. Some of them were, sometimes none of them were. So what we want to do is we want to be able to have a very clear set of criteria, and we determine that through asking very specific questions to narrow down what might be a viable solution. So once you're able to ascertain what that is, you share that. That's the brief. That's the yellow dot, so that your team can explore a bunch of different things and to make sure that each one of their ideas checks back to make sure that it fits within the criteria. So anything that goes beyond that has moved beyond the criteria and the objective. And so those things are not good. And the way you do this is through two things: checklists and parameters. You need both. And you have to be careful that you don't have too many on the checklist or too many on the parameter side. There is an art to this. So a checklist, these are things that you can look at and somebody can nod yes or no, true or false. This is very binary, typically. So the checklist could be that it's a 30-second commercial, that it's a digital delivery, that you have to use the brand colors, that it has to hit this demographic between the 25 to 35-year-old male, and it needs to be delivered by Tuesday at 7 p.m. Those are arbitrary, but typically that's what a checklist looks like. This makes sure that whatever we promise to deliver, we're going to deliver. Parameters are a little softer. They're more qualitative in nature. And this could be an example of a parameters list. It evokes the feeling of celebration. It communicates family. It tells the brand story, and it has an inclusive voice. Okay, so now I'm getting a sense of the boundaries of where we can push. So if you do something that feels arrogant or elitist or off-putting, you've now not hit the inclusive voice. So I have some tips for you, some tips that you can use. And these are questions you're going to ask yourself before you write the brief or before you brief the team. Okay? What are the mandates? What's open to interpretation? So when they say the brand colors, they want us to use these three colors, but we can also use additional colors. It just doesn't have to be just those three. Okay, that's important to know. What are the marketing and communication objectives? So what's the point of making this thing to begin with? What goal are we trying to achieve? So that when we do the work, we know that we're working towards it or we're working against it. 3, in your mind, what does it look like? Can you describe it? So can you describe this when you brief your team? Is it clear in your mind what it looks like? If not, maybe you all need to take a step back and look for some references together and determine, okay, it's kind of in this ballpark. Number 4, how big of a departure from the existing campaign are you looking for? Existing brand, existing website, fill in the blank, whatever it is. Because a lot of times people will tell you they want something new, fresh, and innovative, but in truth, they just want it to be 15% different. We've gone through a large exercise in rebranding a company, changing the logo, for them only to, after weeks of work, to take it just 15% different from their current brand or logo. 5, this is critical. Give the delegate permission to request additional resources and time before they start. Many entrepreneurs don't realize how much power they hold and how intimidating they can be to their own team. So when you say, I need this done by this time, most people just nod, like they're going to do it because they want to make you happy. They want to please you. This is where you need to step in and, despite your own influence over the person, and say, hey, does this sound like it's something that you can do? And I'm perfectly okay for you to say no. Let's figure that out now, prior to moments before it's due, and for you to come to me and say, I can't finish it now. That would be unacceptable to me. So let's talk about what you need. Do you need more time, more resources? What has to happen? Oh, you need somebody to help you cut the mats out for the shot? Great. We'll have somebody do that. Then you can deliver. No problem. Okay, because you're looking for commitment from the person that this can and will be done. So here's an example of a brief. And I like to use as few words as possible. This one is just made up. Matthew made this. So it organizes the information. Here are the parameters. Here's what we need to do. Here's the communication objectives, etc. And it doesn't want to be a 14-page document, because the more words that are on a page, the less likely a creative person is going to read it, the greater room there is for somebody going off the wrong path. Okay, now this one can be a tough one. So we're going to talk about giving feedback right now, because a lot of people won't hire people because they're afraid of there won't be enough work or that they're going to be inefficient. But one of the biggest fears is, I don't know how to direct another person, and don't they know more than me, and I'll feel bad about saying something that will be construed as being nasty, especially if you come from a very polite culture. This could be quite difficult to do. But typically what happens is we're looking for a very specific solution, and sometimes it's not that easy to articulate. And it kind of works something like this, where there's a sweet spot here that the less creative something becomes, the more predictable it is, it becomes boring or cliched. It's very expected, right? So this is the realm of possible solutions. And on the very far right, we've gotten so experimental that it actually looks like they are doing something for another project altogether. This is when whoever's doing the work for you has totally missed the target, or the work is super confusing. I remember the early days of Blind when we started, I had an MFA person, graduate from CalArts, super talented guy, but he loved to layer on like 100 layers, literally. Like every texture that he had within his arsenal, he would drop it on top. So it didn't even matter what client was, like it could be a financial services company, he would find a way to drop 15, 18 layers on top of that thing and make the thing look really messy. And it always felt like he was missing the brief and missing the target altogether. So what we want to do is, the reason why checklists and parameters are important is because we want to be able to give room for people to explore ideas, but not go past a point in which it doesn't relate to the brief anymore. So this is a little bit of the Goldilocks syndrome, where it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. And just right is different depending on you and your client. Some leaders and some owners want to really push the envelope, and that's just part of their culture, that they're always going to challenge their clients and sort of break the brief, and that's what they're known for. And that's okay. So that means they're too cold and too hot really is maybe you haven't pushed it far enough. So we sat down and we were talking about potentially the 3 possible reactions that you're going to have when somebody shows you the work and you have to give them feedback now. So the first one is okay, meaning, yes, you did do the work that was asked, you did do it on time, you've used all the assets, but man, it's just really not exciting. It's really boring. And so this is where I'm using the metaphor or analogy of a rubber band. So the rubber band wants to be stretched, and it doesn't want to just be left there kind of limp and placid like that. What we want to do is we want to push it a little bit. So sometimes this can be frustrating. So what we need to do is we need to redirect the team. Matthew likes to use the word, I think we've missed an opportunity, or what else can we do to achieve these objectives and these criteria that's within the realm of what's possible. Let's push. And for me, this is sometimes when I'm art directing projects, this is what I really have to do, because I feel like we locked in too early on the first or second execution, and that's not really that exciting to me. So this is okay. It's not horrible. We just need to redirect them. The next one is when somebody's played with that rubber band too much and they pulled it so far that it's just completely broken. This is where we need to hit the hard reset button and restart. So sometimes it can feel like they're very happy with the work that they've produced, but they've solved the wrong freaking problem. They looked at some other brief as far as we can tell. And this is going to be a tough one to respond to, because there's a clear gap in the skill level or the taste level of the person that you assign the task to. I don't look at this as it's their fault. I look at this as my fault. I did not select the right person. I saw something in their portfolio that did not exist. Now, unless it was a forgery, chances are you were not paying close enough attention and you put the wrong person into the task that you gave them. And this is a total misalignment. So what I like to do when it's this far off and it feels like it's totally broken is I have to kind of have that ultimatum, that one last shot plan, and prepare for plan B option. This is typically when I talk to the person and I try to be discreet about this. I'm not looking to make a scene to say, oh, wow, this is super far away from my expectations. I'm not sure if I didn't communicate this to you, or perhaps this is just a bad fit between the two of us, but I need you to get this right the next time, because right now I'm telling you just very bluntly, I don't have a lot of confidence going in. So I'm going to start to think about preparing a plan B while you work on this. Can you get it to be like X, Y, and Z? Can we talk about the brief and where it went wrong for you and to redirect you? Or perhaps, and this is where you need to make room for people, is this not a good fit? Or you're not interested in this project? Please tell me right now. It's totally okay. We'll end it here and we'll try to figure out a better project for us to work together on. The reason why I say this, and this is why it's really important for you to say this, is because out of professional pride, people will not want to quit. if they're having a miserable time, if they don't have the right skill set, if they're not even interested in your project at all, or they're double or triple booked, you just need to give them a lifeline. Give them an out. It'll save them face, and it'll save you a lot of aggravation and grief. Because not only will you waste more time, you'll be wasting more money. Okay? So this is where I go straight into plan B. I walk into the office of my project manager or executive producer and I say, Bobby is not cutting it right now. That was a total cluster F, and I'm concerned since they are a critical part of our team, they're not going to be able to deliver. I need your help in finding me an option to Bobby because I just don't think it's going to work. So I'm making plans now. Now you also remember in the pricing module, the pricing strategies module, that the reason why you double and triple the time is for this very reason, because you will inevitably get burned if you hire people. It's just going to happen, and that's not a bad thing. It's just you have to plan for it. This is why the bids are expensive as they are. This is why the numbers seem inflated. It's to cover these types of situations. So in this case, Scott, our EP, will say, Chris, I'm on it. Let me find some people. He goes into the freelance roster database and is searching for people that are of a certain price point, of a certain quality, and will offer me up a couple of options so that I can pick somebody so that he can then call and book them. Okay? This is not a great place to be, but this is sometimes very much a reality. Okay? This is the best one. This one is where somebody has taken that elastic band and pulled it really far, and you are sometimes even surprised at the results. Like, wow, I didn't even think of it, like it could be this cool. You did a fantastic job. And chances are they're 90, 95% of the way there. So this is really where, depending on the situation, you can go in and just have a tiny little tweak just to get it to be a total win and a home run. So here's where I think you need to be very generous with the praise, to tell them they did an amazing job, how happy and thrilled you are, to thank them for being a part of the team, and then just say a couple little things, and I think we're golden. This is awesome. This is incredible. Okay? This is just if it's necessary. I wouldn't do it just because you want to put your hands into it. Remember the very first segment or first chapter that we talked about this. You don't need your hands in everything. Okay? Here's what the virtuous feedback checklist loop. And we put this in front of people and we ask them to think about these things. Is, did what you do, did it accomplish the goal? Does the idea meet the criteria? And if it does both of those things, is it interesting? If it's not interesting, do this again. So oftentimes when somebody presents us with work, instead of saying that's wrong, that's dumb, why'd you do this? Matthew and I or Ben will ask them, so when you're working on this, which part of this communicated or lines up with the objectives that we talked about? How does this communicate confidence or trustworthiness? Because it feels like this is working against it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And sometimes when they're explaining it, you can see like where there's a disconnect, and then you can course correct. But what we want to do is get our creatives, our designers, or developers to get in the habit of going through their own checklist or one that we provide for them and editing and art directing themselves. This is how to learn, this is how to grow. Now, one last little tool, I'm just throwing a random tool in here just to help you guys think. Despite what you think, like when clients give you contradictory objectives, like make it epic, but yet make it intimate, there is a way to resolve this. And these are words that actually came out of a client's mouth within a single breath. And at first I was a little dumbfounded, like, I wonder if they can hear their own voice speaking right now, because those ideas are incongruent in my mind. So I just had to wait for them to finish talking and then circle back and say, look, when you guys said this thing, I was having a really hard time resolving this in my mind because they kind of exist on two ends of the spectrum. When I think epic, I think massive, something that the world's going to wake up and pay attention to. This is something much bigger than us. But then intimate is something that is highly relatable, that's kind of very personal. Where are we on this spectrum? Can you give me an example of what you think? So then we move this triangle left and right, because maybe there is that little sweet spot. And sometimes when they say epic, they really meant more intimate, so that it needs to slide to the right. That there was just this one aspect of the epic part that they were thinking about, not the whole thing. Hiring, firing. This is probably the hardest thing to do, hiring and firing. When to hire, when to fire. Chapter 6. I'm not sure this quote originated with Kier, my business coach, but he says companies are quick to hire and slow to fire. And it should be exactly the opposite. So you should be slow to hire and quick to fire. We like to adopt this mentality that you want to try before you buy. So as often as possible, we like to work with people in some kind of limited capacity, make small commitments, and as they clear each hurdle and they deliver, we then escalate that and increase the booking, the amount of money, and the commitment that we're making until it reaches that point in which we're going to hire somebody. So let's talk a little bit about freelance and independent contractors, okay? When we're working with them, there's a couple things that we need to think about and how to work with them. And we've put it into two categories. Now, this is not set in stone. Of course, there are variables in here. And I want to look at hourly versus flat rates. So when you're talking about hiring somebody, I want you to think about which one may be more advantageous to you, and the situation will change. So therefore, there's no hard and fast rule here. So typically, we like to hire people on an hourly basis or on a day rate, if you will, when we need to have visibility on what they're doing. So that means that they're going to typically, hopefully, work on site. Sometimes they can work off site, but we need to check in with them. This can be risky because if you don't manage it well, you can run over budget compared to, say, a flat rate. And it requires project management and art direction from us. But there's good news there, is because if we're able to do that, we can then therefore elevate the value of their work to what we do. So as you guys may have listened to one of our live streams, Ashley charges a lot of money, relatively speaking, to do what she does. But if she were able to delegate any of that to somebody else, she would be able to capture the difference between what that person charges and what she charges. And the way that she does that is through art directing and teaching and managing that person so they work as if they were her. That's the critical part. Typically, we like to keep people on an hourly or day rate when it's a new relationship, because it may not work out and I could just cut ties really quickly. And this is where, when you're doing this, typically speaking, you're leaning in on your expertise. So if I'm doing a project that requires design, motion graphics, branding, then I will typically work with someone at an hourly rate, because I can kind of art direct them and improve upon their work by just providing some feedback. And it also has, typically an hourly rate has a subjective outcome, meaning I'm not quite sure what done looks like, and so therefore we kind of have to just keep it on hourly. So a good example of this is editing, for example. So an editor typically works on an hourly or day rate until you say the film or the commercial is done, because they have no idea what you think done is, and you can work on it forever. So this helps to mitigate risk on their part. Let's talk about the flat rate part. Flat rate is, I'm going to agree to pay you a set amount of money, so we know what the deliverables are, and I could care less how you do it. I just wanted to get it done. A lot of times flat rate people work off-site. That's just generally speaking. And there's controlled costs here. This is Ben Burns' favorite way of working. He flat rates almost all his freelancers, and it's because it's less risky to him. They typically work autonomously, just by themselves. They don't need a lot of direction from you. And hopefully it's because it's an established relationship. You've worked on something together. You've had great results, so they're just going to do it. For us, working with web developers, there's almost always flat rate, and it's almost always offsite, and they're doing it autonomously without us. And the reason why is we have to rely on their expertise. There's no way I could sit down next to somebody who's developing a site and say, oh, your code isn't clean, or the way you structured the database is all wrong. Let's clean it up together. I would have no idea. So we have to do a lot more vetting up front. And then therefore we can make that commitment to say, I'm going to pay you this amount of money. And typically there's an objective outcome. Does the site work? Does it load fast? Look within a certain time frame? And any other kind of parameters that you can think about, so that we can just check it off on a list. The thing about flat rates is there is some risk that you assume with it. I'm going to share a little story to kind of highlight this point. A while back, I was working with a young woman, and she was going to make stylescapes for me. And I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. This is super easy to do. And I talked to somebody who referred her to me. I said, can she do it? He's like, yes, she can do it. So he said, just work with her on a flat rate. So I agreed to pay her a flat rate. Let's just say it's $2,000 to do 3 stylescapes for me, which at that time, maybe it's a fair price. I don't know. And she's just working on this, and it's been days, and I don't check in on her because this is how this works. And then she's like, okay, I'm ready to show you what I have. And I look at it, and it looks like a total disaster to me. This is one where that metaphor, the analogy of the broken rubber band pops in my head. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is so bad, and I have to present this in 2 days. I don't think there's enough time and ways for me to art direct this. There's a big gap in communication, in skill, in taste level. I need to hit a big restart. So now I'm put in a predicament, because had this person been working hourly, I would have asked or insisted on more frequent check-ins. And there's another problem too, is now I don't feel so compelled to pay them the full flat fee that they were charging, because I can't even use this work. So it creates a whole situation and something that now I have to resolve. This is one time that I can think of that it may be dangerous to enter into a flat rate. That's mostly because I didn't have the time to vet this person properly. I should have asked to see more Stylescape samples and spoken to the person and referred to this person to me more thoroughly and kind of check off all my my lists in terms of like, is this a good fit for us? Okay, let's switch over to staff and employees. So you've got freelancers working for you, and they're doing really well, and they're performing at a high level. So when should you put them on staff? For Ben, if you work in a remote area or a place that feels like it's not New York, LA, or San Francisco, you're almost always, according to him, going to have to hire them on staff, because it's very difficult to get people to work for you if you're not going to hire them on staff. So when to hire? Well, one thing is you just want to put a ring on it, meaning you want to make that relationship exclusive. You want to prevent other people from working with them. So that's when you hire them. That's one reason. Not a great reason, but it is a reason. You're booking them all the time, meaning first it was a couple days here and there. It turned into weeks. Now you're booking them at months at a time. And one of the reasons why Matthew came on staff with us, because I realized, I believe we booked him all year, with the exception of a couple of holidays. He was at the company all the time. So then we had to make him an offer because A, it was costing us too much money, but we knew at this point we could make a commitment. He's good for the company, and hopefully he feels the same way. And obviously it did turn out that way. And this is based on a couple of things. They have a great personality, great attitude towards work. They take direction well. It's a good fit for us on a cultural level. And this person consistently delivers all the time. They not only meet, but they exceed our expectations. And the last one, probably the most important one, is I believe that every person that you hire on your team should make the company money. They're a net positive. It's not an expense. So if you bring on, there's only a few positions within the company that I believe cannot make the company money, like the receptionist or office manager. They're just ordering supplies. But everybody else should make the company money. A designer who works on a project should be able to earn their income in multitudes of 2, 3, 4 times. That's how I look at it. So when to fire? This is super boring, but they don't show up on time, and they do that consistently. They're missing deadlines, which is a very egregious sin in my book. And they're constantly making excuses. Oh, I needed this, and can I get that plugin or that software, or this teammate of mine didn't do this, or somebody wasn't clear, or that was a bad client. When you hear a person who keeps making up excuses, it's starting to tell you something that you need to let this person go. Of course, if they take malicious action, if they steal, if they speak badly about you to the client, those are things that are grounds for firing. If they disclose a piece of information that you've signed to not to share with the world, those are grounds to fire them immediately. If they're insubordinate, disrespectful, or disruptive, time to get rid of them. And if they keep doing the same mistake over and over again, it's just, for whatever reason, it doesn't click with them, it's not a good fit, time to let them go, because they're missing the mark. So I'm going to sum it up. And this is not in any particular order, but some of the bullet points, I think, from some of the things that we're talking about today and in previous modules combined into one little thing as my parting note to you guys. Okay. You want to avoid keeping work because you do it better. This is a sign of bad management. So this is going to strike at the heart of many of you right now. You want to be loyal to your team because they will be loyal to you. So if somebody doesn't do something well, don't be first to criticize and throw them under the bus. They're working for you and they're trying to help you. Keep that in mind, okay? So what you want to do is get agreement on deadlines, tasks, and resources from your delegate. So whoever you're giving the work to, you need to get them to commit to it. Do not set too many controls when delegating. This is why it's important to have a combination of parameters and checklists and not just all checklists. Because when it's all checklists and the controls are too tight, people won't explore beyond that, and you'll get very boring executions. You'll get very boring work product, and you don't want that at all. You want to keep the brief to be clear and concise. And a management style that I believe in is you want to focus on the goal, but not tell them the path on how to get there. Because you rob them of their expertise and their skill and their craft, and you want to let people explore and to feel like it's okay to do things differently than the way that you do them. It is important that when you're delegating is to not just to totally check out. You have to monitor progress and provide valuable feedback along the way. This one I struggle with sometimes, if I'm being honest, because I don't always encourage people. I can be a tough person to work for because I'm very demanding, but I'm learning. And I want to learn how to give compliments more easily. Use delegation as a tool to train your team and staff. This is the most critical part of delegation, is if you don't give them more responsibilities, they don't grow, they stagnate, and then you're just paying people to do very little for you. And if you say you don't have enough time, it's a sign that you are badly organized. And this is part of the problem. Set aside time to properly brief the team. This is critical to the success. And if you've been burnt before, chances are you didn't have a clear brief, or you didn't spend enough time explaining it to somebody. And luckily you guys have had the communication module, because what we want to do is to practice transparent communication. And remember, the goal of communication is to be clear, not necessarily to be polite.
Well, Gary's asking, is there a common first position that you should hire out? Is there something that seems to be common with a lot of the people that we work with? Is there like a common role that's the first hire?
Yeah, there's some different philosophies on how to bring on your first hire. Some people hate the business aspect. They hate talking to the clients. They hate bidding. And so the thing that you hate the most typically is what somebody might hire for. So they'll bring in a producer type to do the bids, to manage the project and talk to clients and be the liaison for all the assets that are traveling back and forth. That makes sense. A different approach is, you know what, I do hate doing the biz dev stuff, but that's really the leadership stuff, and I need to do that. I need to learn to grow. So I need somebody to make the work for me. So whatever it is that you're currently doing, look at whatever is the most low-hanging fruit, the easiest thing for you to delegate, and bring somebody on for that. So for example, if you're doing branding, identity design, bring in a logo designer, somebody who can lay out things, and that's who you would bring in first so that you can offload that work to them. The idea is you need to free up your time as much as possible. So for every critical task that you're getting paid to do, I would try and hire somebody to do that. And this is kind of an interesting thing. I know this is the last module that we're talking about, but you remember in the pricing and bidding strategies module that we set up, the reason why there's so many categories or line items for different roles is because for this very reason. Because should we have to book this job, or should we book this job, we would have to hire people to do the work so that we're not caught doing the work ourselves. So you'll find that as you learn how to delegate better, your bids will get higher and they will start to become more robust because they're going to be filled in with the actual people who are going to do the work.
What if a client only wants to work with you, the business owner? How do you handle that? Is there a good response?
Yeah, there's a good response. What you would say typically, and if this were true, of course, you would say this with conviction and say it very emphatically. Mr. and Mrs. Client, do you love the work that you've seen? I presume yes, that's why we're talking. Well, that work was not created by me. You need to understand that. I don't actually make the work myself. What I do is I direct the team, and the team's going to do it. Or that work is the product of XYZ creative directors, and they're part of our organization. So you're actually in better hands if you work with them versus me, because it's been a couple of years since I've actually done the work. Does that satisfy you?
In delegation, what are some bonus tips that you have to minimize the potential for a failed project? Anything that we didn't cover? Yeah, how do we keep a project from failure when it comes to delegation?
I think the thing that you need to do is enroll the team into what it is that you're doing and get commitment from them. So it's easy to sit there and think from a very autocratic level, this is the way it's supposed to work, and you guys just do it my way, and you force that down upon them, and it becomes a very challenging endeavor, and you don't get what you want. Everybody's frustrated, including your team. It's not just you that get frustrated. And believe it or not, most people show up to work with the intention of doing what it is that you want them to do. So when things break down, it's a sign that there's poor communication or systems or processes in place, and that's what you need to examine. But it's very critical that everybody understand, here's the global business objective, here are important milestones for us to hit, and here are the communication objectives, and these are promises we made to the client. This is not an arbitrary thing that I came up with. This is what they agreed to, what we agreed to collectively, and that's why they're paying us. So let's do this and let's move forward.
How often do you need to update your freelance list? People's rates might move up and down. Do you factor that in before quoting your client?
Yeah, so here's the thing is I wouldn't worry too much about the rates going up, because if you're quoting your client the same rate, you're cutting it too close to the bone, you're not doing what we're suggesting that you do anyways. You should consistently put in the highest rate for the individual positions to be able to afford you to buy or to book the very best, most talented people that you can find on planet Earth. That's a general guideline, a rule of thumb there. You want to constantly update your database of people, because you start to run into this issue where you're calling people and they're not available. Availability is a big problem of ours. If the 12, 15, 25 people that we love working with were always available, we'd never have to update the database. So this is an insurance policy against them being booked. Good people who have a great attitude are very rare to come by. So people recognize the same thing that you recognize. It's not like you're some kind of genius that has figured this thing out. They get booked all the time.
Have you brought any freelancers to do branding work at Blind? Post the discovery session and the stylescape, how do we do the download on the thought process to the freelancer?
Yeah, 100%. One of our best designers was a freelancer. She came in. Her name is Pei Lu, and she came in, and Pei worked on it, and she had to learn about our process. She struggled a little bit with making stylescapes, but once she got into it, she came up with some really fantastic designs and ideas, and she really brought a fresh voice or perspective to what it is that we're doing. We constantly bring in freelance writers to help us write the messaging. Ben Burns and I were kind of amateur copywriters, and that's kind of stretching it. So what we'll do, we'll write a few lines to feed the writers. We'll give them the brief, the strategy document, and they'll write lines, and then we just kind of direct them. Sometimes they hit it the first time. More often than not, we have to course correct quite often because they don't have the full context of the project.
Right. And I think that's also where your personal creative brief kind of comes in. Like for me, I like to do that because I know with the strategy documents that we end up with the client, sometimes they're 100 pages long. Mm-hmm. And I don't expect my creative team to read all of that and even understand what all of that is, because a lot of it is paraphrased notes that we took during the meeting. So what I like to do is I read the doc and I think about the particular deliverable that I'm asking them to execute, if it's the logo or if it's a stylescape or if it's the website, and I try and pare down the information that's important to them. So if it's the website, for instance, here's an overview of what the brand is. Here's the brand strategy. Here are the users that we're trying to reach, and here's the goal for this website. So I try and pare down the information, and I refer back to the documents. Like if you want to learn more about the users, read page 18 in our strategy document. Read this section. So I try to keep it very tight so that I understand, like when I review the work with my team, what I'm looking for, and they understand what I'm looking for. And it's much easier to get feedback and direct the team and keep us on track.
Mm-hmm. And I've also noticed.
Okay, so one tip I learned from Jose is that there's a lot that you add to the brief when you're talking to somebody. And what he does is he goes into Keynote, he goes into rehearse mode, and he records him talking about the Keynote deck, the strategy document, as he's doing it. Then he saves it out as a QuickTime movie, and he shares it with his team, whether working in-house or remotely. They have his explanation and what he adds to that. So he doesn't have to do that more than once. Because oftentimes you're sitting down, you have the same document, you're sitting next to a person, you're talking to them, they're trying to learn what it is that you're talking about while taking notes, and it's very difficult to do that at the same time. So a lot of what you're saying will get lost. So that's a great tool, a great tip. A lot of people have done this, and they're very successful at doing this. And with Drive Space being what it is and the tool so readily available, You guys, it's so easy to do.
Totally want to plus one that. I can't tell you guys how many times I've sat down with the team and said, I'm concerned you guys aren't taking notes. This is concerning. So yeah, I've done that before myself. How does having a subjective outcome in hourly help mitigate risks on the freelancer's side?
Wait, say that one more time?
So how does having a subjective outcome when you're charging hourly help mitigate risks on the freelancer's side?
Well, how does it? Okay, so if you're a freelancer and we don't know what it is we're doing, I don't want to flat fee that because I have no idea. It's like going in and bidding on a website that you have no idea how big the scope is. So from the freelancer vendor side, when the outcome, the goal is subjective, you want to be able to charge hourly, I think. That's how it mitigates risk for the freelancer, not for you, for the freelancer.
I think also in the same term, you can mitigate the risk for the business owner who's hiring the freelancer, because if they come up with the solution on day one, then you don't have to pay them anymore. It's not a 3-week engagement. It's like, wow, I didn't know you could draw so fast. I didn't know you can design so quickly. This is it. I don't need any more. I could present this to the client and we're done.
Yeah.
So that's another way that you can mitigate the risk for hourly or freelance.
The rolling of the dice makes me always want to go flat fee. That's just me. I've been burned by a lot of different writers that charge hourly in the past. So now I'm like, 100% flat fee.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. There's a hybrid model, which is you can do an hourly with a cap, a fixed cap. And you can also do an hourly and say, look, please, I'm concerned about budget and I've never worked with you before. So if we intended to work on this for 4 days, it's critical for me. Say at the end of the first day, you send me some samples of what you've done just so I can see and maybe, if necessary, redirect you. Okay, and you can even say very plain, like the way Ben has said, I've been burned in the past where I've waited to the last minute. I paid the full amount. And I did not get what I needed. And I don't want to set that up because I'd love to continue working with you. So let's figure this out together. This is why the whole, tell me about how you like to work. Tell me about your process. That opens it up. So they'll say, yeah, I don't want to work on this for very long without showing you something. Now I remember there's a friend of mine, and she's a writer, and she insisted she needed a certain amount of time and the way that she presents. Like I said, just shoot me some lines in a Word document. And she's like, I don't work that way. I said, okay. So she had to give me the words laid out on a page with some simple imagery, because I can now see the way that she lays out the words changes the way that I read the words. She's very much a visual writer. And so that's why I have to respect that process. And what she gave me back was really great. And the one last little thing I would say is this, is because I have been managing people almost since day one of the company. So I have a long history of managing people, of people coming in and out through the doors. So I feel very confident most of the time to manage people. Whereas Ben, coming from the East Coast, didn't have a lot of like a giant talent pool to work with. He's been burned a lot. And so it's just a reflection of the environment that you come from. Whatever is comfortable for you, work that way.
How do you know when you can afford to hire people or delegate?
You can afford to hire people the minute you get a job. Okay, so if you are hired, as I have been in the past, I've shared the story with you guys. Somebody paid me $400 or $500 a day to design logo work for them. Easy. I just brought in somebody immediately for $200 so I can make $300 on top of them. And I did that the first month that I was working as a freelancer. There's really no reason why you have to hold on to this, because I value free time. I value the time to think and look for new clients and develop personally. So while the person's working on the logo, I'm not just in Tahiti or something. I'm sitting there thinking, what is the next evolution of this? Where is this going to go? Where's the next job going to come from? What do I need to do in terms of the website? How are we marketing ourselves? Do I need to find a sales rep? Those are all the things I won't be thinking about if I'm doing the work.
Yeah, I totally agree with Chris. For those of you who need a little bit more of like a tactical approach, one thing that I found helpful is to start tracking my time. And what I realized when I started tracking my time was I was doing a lot of things that I could pay somebody $10 an hour to do. And that's something that Michael Janda says in his book, is if you're doing anything that you can pay somebody minimum wage to do, don't do that thing. Hire those people. And the only way I was able to see that was by tracking my time. And I did that for a week. And I was very detailed. I was like, okay, I'm writing emails, but what kind of emails am I writing? These are lead generation emails. Okay, this is something I need to be doing. Okay, these are, just delivery emails. I can hire an intern to be doing this for me. And so that was a really easy way for me to just quantify in that same grid that Chris kind of gave you where I'm spending my time and where I need to start delegating. And Ashley, I think you asked a thing about how to work with a virtual assistant. That's another great way to do it. You take a look at the tasks that you're currently doing and see what matters. Then you can apply that to your delegation and hiring. Should we allow the freelancers to communicate directly with the client?
I don't think so. And this is going to be a very delicate relationship. Remember, the things that you're supposed to hold on to as a leader is the client relationships. Generally speaking, freelancers, that can be kind of risky for you. Unless they've been with you for a long time and you know how they communicate their style, they're not going to poach your client or talk badly about you. It is a dangerous thing to be doing. You can put your staff to talk to them because they've already made the commitment to you to stay on staff and be exclusive to you. But the question probably comes into why do you want a freelancer to speak to your client? Maybe you're feeling like you're just shuttling information back and forth a little bit too much. Perhaps that's the case. And so what I would do then is develop a system or protocol on how to mitigate that. Ideally, if you're talking to the client so much, I would hire a project coordinator, bring them on staff, build that into your budget, and so that they can manage that information for you. And you should do that ASAP. But if you don't have that and you want to use software, there are some tools that you could use to help to move information back and forth. For example, you can create a Trello board, which is what we've done for some of our smaller engagements. We give clients full visibility on the tickets that were being asked of us, the things that are in progress, the things that need to be checked in on. And we ask them to make comments directly inside of Trello. So it's all captured and it's very clean. And some of our clients just love it. And then the freelancers and our staff can look at those comments and they're instructed not to say anything or communicate to them directly, but then they can get the direction that they need from them. But the other reason why you don't necessarily want people talking to the client, it isn't so much about protecting the client and shielding any potential poachers from taking your client away. It's mostly because oftentimes you've been trained to listen differently, to speak and communicate differently, to be very objective, and you hold the biggest goal kind of in sight, which is to make sure the client's happy and that the business goals are met. Not necessarily, is this a cool piece for the portfolio? So people enter things in with a different agenda, and it's dangerous to put somebody in that doesn't share your exact same agenda. That's critical. The other thing is you interpret. So when somebody says make something bigger or make it more dynamic or plus it out, what does that mean? You need to be able to refine their direction to get agreement with them and then to be able to distill that down into some kind of very tactical thing that somebody else can work on. A freelancer without that same training or skill or experience might interpret that very differently for disastrous results.
This is more about scaling. So when branching out into the world as a company name versus a solo freelancer, what is okay to put in your portfolio? Can you put work from other agencies, other jobs, all that kind of stuff in your business portfolio?
Okay, so you're a solo freelancer and now you want to create a company, something that's not just Brett. Right? So this becomes very tricky. It depends. Let's talk about what is right ethically and what's right legally. Let's start with legally first. Did you sign a contract with this company that does or does not give you explicit permission to use that work? And if you did, then you can't show it at all, because people have done this to me and I've sued them. I literally have sued people. This is not a figurative term of speech. When somebody, a former director of ours, went to another production company and put their work on the company's reel, we had a real problem with that, because that was done at our company, at our expense, while we nurtured this director. So they're allowed to go out and work in the real world, but they're not allowed to use that work anywhere except for a personal site. Because basically the other company stole our work to leverage it to get other work. And this has happened to us many times in the past. And finally I had enough of it, so I sued somebody. And it was resolved fairly quickly. So let's talk about ethically. Let's say that you didn't sign such a contract, or it's ambiguous, the language. So what I would do is apply the common courtesy law, which is would you want somebody to do this to you? Would you want a freelancer who worked on a small part of your project to take that work and then to go out into the world and tell them, this is me? It creates confusion in the marketplace. It creates some ambiguity around who did what and the origin of the project itself. So this idea of provenance, like where did this come from? And what we want to be able to do is have a very clear lineage as to where things come from. So here's typically what you would do. You would say, you would reach out via email conversation is, I would like to use this work on my company's portfolio. Is it okay if I use it, if I give full credit to the team and your company's name? And sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no. Sometimes they say no because they can't license out the images because they're intellectual property of the client. They themselves have a contract that allows them to use it, but not to assign it to other people. So this is probably not a good idea. So this is where you have a portfolio that's a personal portfolio that you share in closed meetings, but you don't share outside, that you don't put it on your website. You can say you've worked for such and such clients, but don't show the work. You can say you've worked for XYZ company where you did that work at. But this is typically where a locked PDF is sent to the client to review, and it should give full credit as to who did what. The thing that I want to caution all of you guys against doing is don't use another company's work and not be forthright in your role and responsibility with that work, because it only takes one question for them to ask, what was your role? Did you do this part that we love? And for it to all to unravel on you. Believe it or not, many, many years ago, somebody sent me a demo reel and I thought this was fantastic. I called the person in and I was talking to them like, this is amazing. And they're like, I didn't do that part. I'm like, how about this part? I didn't do that part. So what the heck did you do? So after that, it didn't really matter what they said anymore. Needless to say, we never worked with that person, ever.
All right, so she wants to know about the peaks and the valleys. So obviously when she's got a lot of work, delegating seems possible. It seems like she can afford it. But how can we predict stuff and how can we manage this ebb and flow when times get tough? It doesn't look like hiring is the best route.
So you're hiring freelancers to work on your project based on the expansion and contraction of your business. So you would book people for the duration of your project with a little pad in case it runs long. That's fine. So theoretically now, Pam, as you've hired these people to work for you, what the heck are you doing? So I suspect now what you're doing is you're sitting by, potentially getting your hands into the work again, or micromanaging, versus going out and developing and nurturing new relationships. That's what you need to be working on. You should be working on some piece of like inbound content to do content marketing. You could be producing a video. You should be out there speaking or going to events and conferences. You should be going to trade shows. You need to get out there. There's your face and your brand and is connected. Go get it out into the world.
Somebody told me this once. He said, hiring your first employee or hiring an employee, there's never a right time. It's like trying to have kids. There's never a best time to have a kid. And it's just one of those things where after you hire that person, after you start delegating tasks out, you'll realize that time opens wide up. And the first one is kind of a leap of faith because it never looks like you're going to be in that right spot, but that opens up so much opportunity for you to go out and drum up new business and do what you need to do as a company leader, that it's huge. You just need to kind of take that leap of faith. How do we work together? Meaning people from the class going in, they're going to try value-based pricing. How do you envision a successful relationship working with two people from business bootcamp or more?
This is entirely up to you. So this is about your skill set, what's complementary, how you like to work, and if you've been visible or not. I know there are over 40 people in this group, but some of you guys are very quiet, never comment, never post. So it tends to be that this squeaky wheel gets the grease. So people that are more visible, that are asking questions or participating, everybody gets to know who they are. And then the people who are kind of quiet and meek and hiding in the shadows, lurking, nobody knows who you are, so it's going to be a lot harder to work with you. You guys know, if you've watched the channel at all, people hire who they know, who they like, period. So if they don't know you, even this group of 40, we're in trouble. So let's do ourselves all a favor. Let's be more participatory. Let's engage with the comments. Let's all chime in. You don't have to have the right answer. You just have to have an opinion. Put it in there, and people are going to connect with you. One of the cool things is we all survived this thing together, right? The whole victory with a hand like on fire. You survived the gauntlet. Now you're going to emerge with a shared experience that's going to bond you and make you tighter and stronger. I would definitely encourage you guys to continue this relationship long after this happens. It's easily contained within the Facebook group, but I love it to spill out into the real world where you're helping each other out.
So let me ask you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt us.
Okay, let me just say this part and then you say your part, Ben. In the Facebook Pro community group, I was delighted when people started working with each other. This was fantastic. They were hiring each other to write, to design. They're collaborating. They're trading services. We have peak performance partners where people are meeting together once a week for an hour or 30 minutes, whatever we agree to, 30 minutes. And this is amazing. It continues to help people grow. So definitely take advantage of the community, guys.
So moving forward, let's say that an opportunity presents itself to somebody. How do you recommend they go in on the job? Should there be one primary person? Should they pitch the job together? How does that work?
I think that depends on the individuals. Some people want to be super transparent. Let's just say like you're two small size companies and you're better off coming in as a unified front versus somebody white labeling. And that makes a lot of sense. So you talk up front, we will share or split responsibilities and the fees. Or one person is going to lead the engagement. They need a more supportive role. And the other person is just happy to get the lead. And whatever their budget that they ask for, as long as they get it, they're happy. That works for us too. Ben Burns, you and I know we're talking to people to find sponsorship deals for us. And we tell them what our fees are. If they get $100,000 more than that, I don't even care. What we need to do is get our fees. And this is where I guess you guys, you don't want to get too greedy and look at what the other person has. If you ask for a particular rate and it's fair to you and it fits within the scope of work you've been asked to do, fantastic. Let the other person bid it the way they want.
It also depends on the client in my mind, because some clients, a lot of clients will want one point of contact and one contract. Yeah. Right. So it's like, in my mind, a lot of clients are going to want to have a relationship with one company that manages the relationships.
Yep.
Can you speak to bringing on interns as an alternative to freelance full-time?
Yes. Keith, thank you for asking this question, you guys. Here's the real value right here. How does Blind make money? We make money because we bring in interns all the time that are very talented, who should be out in the real world working, but they're still in school or they haven't had the right opportunity presented to them. So we are able to make money in that spread, the gap that exists between what the interns make, which is fairly low, like we pay them $10, $11 an hour, something like that, versus what we charge, which is like $200, $300, $400 an hour, relatively speaking, because we don't do hourly based pricing, right? And so we're able to capitalize on that. So the problem here is to realize the interns don't come in fully baked. There's a reason why they're still an intern and not a working professional as other people have become, is because they're missing some skills. This is a great opportunity for you to delegate, to teach, and to nurture them, because eventually they will be able to do the work of another professional, and you get to realize the gain from that. Now, also realize that they can't work for you as an intern forever. So you kind of have to have a revolving group of interns coming in every 3 to 6 months, and that's just the cycle of life. They get to a point in which they're actually really good, and then they hold you hostage because they're like, you can't pay me that rate anymore. You
gotta pay break your heart.
You gotta pay me the real rate, right? And when you do, you're like, oh shoot, this is not economically feasible for me anymore. So you got to bring in more people, and this is fantastic. Many of the people that are on staff today at our company have started out as interns. They've all been paid, and then they just slowly they become a freelancer, a full-time freelancer, a permalancer, a staff position, and then you're looking at one of them as the creative director staring at you in the face. I think Matthew, you started out as an intern for us.
That's right, 2006, 7.
Yeah. So many people have, not just Matthew.
I love the intern crew. My first hire at my company was an intern, and they bring like a certain fire. A lot of them, they're so pumped to be working with you that it makes the whole experience great, and it's a fantastic sandbox to test delegation and stuff. Just like Chris was saying, it just
interns. It's nice too because of their energy, like they're not jaded, right? So they love being there, sometimes even more than the current staff. And the good thing about that is it pushes the current staff, because what you could do is you could even take more stuff off of your plate and just say, hey, staff member, I need you to mentor this intern.
Yeah.
I need you to delegate tasks to them. So you take even more off of your plate, which is great. And then what happens is that your staff member, like, they get better because they understand how to communicate. They understand how to be responsible for somebody else.
They start sitting up straighter.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then so it lifts the entire culture and community at your company if you're able to develop systems like that and bring in the fresh talent that's very hungry to be there and wants to prove something.
Nothing whips a team into shape faster than having a hotshot intern.
Yeah.
Like, you're making what? And you know more about this than me? Job security right there. So what I would do is just sandbag it. Hire a professional, tell them that the person's an intern.
Oh, man.
Throw everybody. Let's talk about that raise you asked me for again.
Do you ever let freelancers present their own work on client reviews or include them in the meetings so they can hear the client conversations directly?
Yeah. Sometimes I will include freelancers in on the call. I instruct them, please don't say anything, but I just want you to listen. Sometimes I use that as a punitive tool, and sometimes I use that as a learning opportunity. When I say punitive, it's because, so you fought me for so many times and you did this crazy design. Now I'm going to let you hear what the clients have to say about it, because they think for some reason you didn't fight for them. You didn't defend the idea. And then they listen to it and that board gets slaughtered or just gets skipped over entirely. And they're showering praise and love on a different one. And then they know, like, oh, maybe I should trust the old man. Maybe the old lady was right. The other times it's because I want them to be able to hear firsthand the feedback so that we can talk about it afterwards. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I will tell you to do is most of you guys should be recording your client calls, not from an FBI kind of point of view, but for clarity so you can play back. It's like, what did they say again? And sometimes you have a dispute among the creative team. Sometimes Matthew, myself, and Ben or Greg will sit in on a call and we hear different things and we want to be able to play that back and listen for tone and intention to make sure, yeah, we got that right. And we'll confirm it also via email. And this is where I think you guys, if you don't have too much pride, that you can walk into a situation and say, look, I'm not sure I heard this correctly. And there's some debate internally what you meant. When you said X, did you mean this? Did you mean to tell us to make the logo bigger or to your favorite colors, persimmon color or something like that? And let them clarify. And it's totally okay.
Okay, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Friday evening, the last Friday evening of the Business Bootcamp TA session. This week's about delegation. We talked a lot about why you need to delegate. We talked a lot about delegation techniques. And I'm going to throw it out to you guys to see if you had any questions or anything like that. So we'll get into that in a second. First, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you guys have suffered through on this 7-week journey so far. And I'm really thrilled that we've been given the opportunity to do this. First, is my audio okay? Because I have a fan on. It's like 85 degrees in here.
Nope, you're good.
Awesome. So, how many of you guys are ready to hire people?
I can say that I walked in where I had a staff there because they were hiring for a creative director. So I walked into a position that had a team already in place. However, I did have to let somebody go. So that was a tough one. That was the first time I ever had to do that.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't pretty.
No. Tell me about it. I just let somebody go today.
Oh,
I feel that pain.
That's tough. So this employee had been with the company for a very long time. I want to say close to 10 years, maybe. And I was at the company for, just about a year or so. And when I came on board, I did a lot of things to change the way, the expectations of my team were really high. I came from a company, a broadcast company, that had a very high bar on, what was to be expected. we serviced when I was with that television company, we serviced 42 television stations and a super station. So
Wow.
there was a level of quality that I was around for almost 10 years that I wanted to carry over to this next company.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately the guy that I had to let go he was there for a long time. He was very comfortable. And we were just not going to get any more out of him than what he was currently doing. He wasn't a bad designer. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a really nice guy. It's just
Sure.
that he even knew after the whole conversation, when I let him go, he knew. He's like, listen, he's like, I know where you're coming from. I probably should have left years ago, and I got very comfortable, and it was, my time I was past where I was supposed to be at the company. So, so he kind of knew obviously it's never a good thing. He wasn't expecting to be let go. But at the same time, he understood. He understood why.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I don't want to say fired, but it was for cause. Cost the client almost $1 million. It was a small business. Luckily we were friends. But in order to continue the relationship, he was like, I don't want to work with that designer anymore. This is not the first time that he screwed up on a packaging assignment. And, I know it's on us to check to proof, but, these mistakes kept popping up, and it was just multiple times. And, during that conversation, he begged for his job, which was insanely difficult. And, it was, this is years ago, by the way. And it was one of those things where it's like, this was really tough on me as the creative director that was like having to do this, and really tough on just my entire morale.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, through that process, you just have to be empathetic, even if it's for cause, even if it's something that's like, listen, you've had a lot of chances kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's still losing their job. And so that was just something I had to just keep remembering. Like, this as shitty as this is for me, it's even worse for the person sitting across from me. So I totally get that. That sucks. But it taught me a valuable lesson too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that Chris reiterated in the lecture. It was hire slow, fire quickly. Because, otherwise you don't want to hang on to people that are pulling the business down. So
it's true.
Yep. Well, thanks, JD, for kicking things off on such an awesome note. Positive.
Wait, that's the second time I did that, right? Because the first time we said, I think it was somebody opened up with Kate Spade dying, I think, or was it Anthony Bourdain? I don't remember what it was,
yeah.
but
we
kicked off the last session on such a high positive note too.
Jeez, man. So JD, feedback on this module. I mean, did you get stuff out of it?
Oh yes, of course. Always every one of these modules you always come back with something. It was very, very good for me because I'm very much, and always have been, I'll take everything. I'll give me, and I'll just do it. I'll do everything. And it was very difficult. It's very difficult for me to delegate. Even to this day, I know I shouldn't be doing everything. But I do. And sometimes I do it to a fault, and you burn out very quickly.
Yeah.
I have a staff, and I have people who should be doing this stuff, and I've gotten better with it. But I also came from, again, a company. It was a very large company. And while I did do a lot of cool work, I also did a lot of the grunt work, and I know how tiring and annoying that can be. So I try not to dump, as the person who delegates the projects, I try not to dump the grunt or the crap work onto everybody else. I'll generally give good projects to my team, and then I'll take, some of that grunt work or the not glorious projects just to give somebody else a chance to, to shine and show me what they can do, or see if somebody's worth, stepping up someday into a better position than when they're at. So I think it's good for morale. I think it also is good for my team to see that I'm, as their leader, is somebody who will step up and is not afraid to get their hands dirty and will still do the work and don't always take the good projects for themselves. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So but it also becomes burdensome at times, because I will take a lot of that stuff on. So delegation is a big, important thing. And I understand that.
One thing you have to remember, well, let me ask this first. Do you guys have a solid pyramid structure? Do you have a lot of interns running around?
We have no interns.
Is it on purpose?
No. Typically the interns that the company usually hires is around this time when summer, when summer comes around. I did have, we had somebody that was there as an intern last year. She didn't work out so well. I think it's just we get so busy and we're so focused on the work that I don't really have time to take a look at see what the interns are.
Sure.
We will occasionally hire freelancers, but since I started, I had a very healthy freelance budget, but I pride myself on us doing the work in-house as much as possible.
Yeah. So interns they are my secret sauce. Seriously. Yeah. I absolutely love working with interns because
you're in a good area for it, though.
Well, even in Richmond, probably 80% of the people that I hired were interns. Now, I would pay them.
Yes. But even in Richmond, I'm in the middle of Nowheresville, Massachusetts. And
you'd be surprised, man.
I know.
The level of work that you get out of an intern is absolutely fantastic. And as long as you're not having them like take out the trash and go get coffee, they will do the grunt work with a smile on their face, because they get to do what they want to do for the first time or for the second time with actual real clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
I've been there. I know.
Yeah. I remember my first internship. I got to touch something for DreamWorks.
Ooh.
And it was like, I was the top dog. I mean, yeah. I just remember that and I was working for free, and just to have that opportunity it was worth it. And I still think it was worth it. And I still think if I were to go through and do it all over again, I probably would have done several internships, even if it meant working for free. So that's why I like to say it's a good pyramid structure when you have multiple people working that are, especially if you're at a business owner or creative director level, if you have a couple of tiers below you, so that your people are learning how to manage and work with other people as well. So this past January through March, we mistakenly had 5 interns, which for blind is a lot. Typically we have 3. And because we had 5, our management bandwidth was like capped. The Army has this rule of 3s where every person, they max out at 3. Sometimes there's 4, but you only supervise 3 people. That's the rule of thumb.
That's good.
So, we realized that like one creative director could not handle a full team of designers and interns and project manager. So we assigned all of the interns to the full-time designers as mentees or mentors. And it worked beautifully. All the designers, it helped with their ego because they were given the chance to lead. And then the interns loved working with somebody in the field because they were like learning from them.
Right.
And they felt like they were in the trenches with men that were, and women that were of more experience. And then at the end of the day, we were only managing the team that we came in with, and they were, our full-time guys were doling out the tasks to the interns and measuring their progress and tracking their progress. So there's a level of like responsibility there that they hadn't seen before. So it went over really, really well.
Yeah, I know. They keep asking me if I want interns, and I haven't taken that jump.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a limiting belief. Maybe it's a limiting belief that I'm in an area that I'm not going to get good interns. I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess I won't know unless I try.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. Any other questions? All the downloads, everything was good?
Yes. I guess it was weird that because like I said, I was able to download all the other lectures with the exception of that one. However, that was in Chrome. I went to Safari and it was downloadable. So I don't know if it was just, it happened on the back end. I don't know if it was something that you guys had done, and when you said you had made it downloadable after that, but all of them are downloadable.
Okay, cool.
So I got it.
Good. Nice. Awesome. You guys will have access to that course, the Teachable stuff?
Yes, and when Matt told us that we have access to that on Teachable, I downloaded the app right away and have been re-listening to it. And I think a lot of people had commented that they're re-listening to the modules again as well too.
Cool. All right. I'm going to go over to Marvin. Revens, let me know in the chat if you wind up getting somewhere where you can chat, and then we'll toss the ball to you. It's nice. I like the Friday afternoon spot because I get to know you guys a little bit better. It's an intimate group. Matthew's got like 30 people in his. Bastard. All right, Marvin.
Hi, Ben.
Okay, much quieter. All right.
Hi, Ben.
What's up, man?
Doing great. You?
I'm hanging in there. It's Friday, right?
Yeah.
So, delegation. Tell me about your situation. You got a team?
Yes, I've got a team, and I think I have in a similar situation as JD.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm doing the opposite. I'm hiring quickly and I'm firing slowly. So I think our team got big really quickly, or I think it's and I'm really slow to fire, even though I think some of them are bringing the team down. I think that's my struggle there. I mean, it's hard to fire someone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. You have to look at it like an opportunity cost above all else. I mean, if keeping somebody on staff is preventing you from hiring another rock star, what does that break down to? That seat can be used in a much better way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's also something to be said about helping people raise their skills. But when you have somebody that's just not interested in improving or advancing their career or taking more responsibilities, when you get complacency, that's really where I start to go, is it going to fit? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think that is something I should learn. I mean, I talk to my team consistently, and I ask them if they're on the same boat as me or we're on the same page, and most of them would say that they want to improve their skills, but some of them, although that's the words that come out of their mouth, I mean that's not what I see, and I mean the way I read them, the way they compose themselves, the way they do the work. So it's hard because when you talk to them, they suddenly became so passionate about it, and yeah, I mean
instant mix passion. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I go to one-on-one with them, I mean they suddenly became passionate. I wanna contribute to the studio, and it makes me feel good. Oh, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe this guy really is trying very hard. Maybe I should give this guy a chance. But a few months passes by, and then I still could not see. Why could I see two different person when I talk to that person one on one, and on a daily basis? That person is showing something different.
Yeah.
And I guess that's something that I should learn. To fire someone.
Yeah. Have you ever fired anybody before?
Yes. Two. I have fired two people.
How did it go?
And it went well, but it was very difficult. And I told myself I don't want to fire another person again. I felt so horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I can feel that pain. I can. And the trick is not letting the fear of letting somebody go affect your judgment when it comes to your company, because the company is what needs to survive in the long run, One thing that we didn't talk about is like periodic check-ins or reviews. Do you do that with your team? As far as like performance? It sounds so formula, like it sounds like it's coming from like the office, but do you do performance reviews?
No, we don't do performance. We do. For every deliverable that they make, there are certain check-ins, but of their overall performance, no, we don't have a performance review.
That may be something to look at, because that's something that I know that I did with my team, and I don't think that we do often here at Blind. But otherwise, it's really difficult for your employees to figure out where they stand. It's really, unless you're really good about giving both positive and negative feedback on a very, very consistent basis about their overall performance, you might want to look at formalizing that, because the worst is coming to somebody completely cold and saying, listen, you're not living up to, the expectations. We're going to have to let you go. That can be shocking. You want to give them ample opportunities to improve, and scheduled performance reviews, as corporate as that sounds, it's really kind of key, as long as they're honest and, positive, and not necessarily being positive for the employee, but like, the motivation being like, let's make this place better. Let's make the culture better. And here's what we can do to do that. And here's what I'm seeing that you're doing well. In the Army, they call it, oh man, it just slipped in. It slipped in and slipped out. I was going to say after action review, but that's like the post-mortem kind of thing after the project. But maybe looking at scheduled performance reviews, because at a certain point, like, somebody's going to know that like they either need to shape up or ship out. And if you're not communicating what that win looks like to them, it's going to be a real shock when it's time for them to lose their job.
Okay.
We do that yearly, and it's also good too, because if you do run into a case where you have to let somebody go, number one, you have a record of it, and then also being an employee, for having, so it's not like all of a sudden one day you're just up and fired, and you said, well, I have a performance review very recently that says that was a glowing review. My boss says that was amazing. Where did this come from all of a sudden? Also having a yearly performance review where you sit down with the employee and you go over, your performance for the year. And we also do goals. So each employee will come up with 3 goals, usually one that's good for the company, and then like 2 or 3 that are good for your growth. And then in a year, we'll go back and we'll see how, did you hit those goals? Why didn't you hit the goals? How can we help you hit those goals? And not necessarily, it could be just like self too. Like you want to learn more, you want to expand your knowledge in, X, Y, Z. And then the company hopefully will provide you with the tools to get there. But I definitely agree with having performance, like you said, as corporate as it sounds, having performance reviews is important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I think delegation is all about a series of like iterative painting the win and then evaluating the performance. So it's like you actually have to paint the picture of what the win looks like. That's imperative to all delegation, because if somebody doesn't know what they're striving towards, it's going to be really difficult for them to hit the target. You can't hit the target if you don't know where it is. And you can do that both with the project, where it's like, you know, hey guys, here's the creative brief. This is what the win looks like. Let's define that. And just their overall career performance, like, and you do that in the actual performance reviews.
Okay.
Counseling.
Nice. Yeah.
Counseling.
Nice
That's what it
suggestion.
is. It's you get counseled in the military, and it can be either a positive or a negative thing.
Okay.
Whoops.
Also, I have a concern. I think this is a limiting belief in itself. I think one thing that I'm afraid in firing people is because I think my team has grown really close to each other, and if I fire someone, I think I have a fear that it might affect morale. So I think it's a limiting belief. So I think that if I fire someone and they're really close to that person, it would bring morale down, and I think I don't want that to happen.
Can I just
Go
add
for it.
something to
Yeah.
that? So that happened when I let this. I was afraid that was going to happen when I let my employee go, because, like I said, he had been there almost 10 years. He worked very closely. The studio team is a very small team. There's like 4 of us, 5 including myself, and the 4 guys worked very, very closely together for many, many, many years. And I was afraid that if I let one of those guys go, it was going to have like a horrible cascading effect. It was going to be, the morale was going to be down. Everybody's going to feel like their job's not safe. They're going to start looking, and it was horrible. So one of the very first things that I had to do after I let the employee go, I brought in the other 3 guys and I sat them down and I said, listen, I want you guys to know this is an isolated incident. People are not being let go after this. I had to take care of this issue. And to my surprise, they understood. They understood why I did it. It also, actually, I feel it kind of boosted morale, not because he was bringing them down, but because they felt that somebody genuinely cared enough about the company, the direction, and the creative to course correct and try to improve upon a situation that was stagnant for a very long time. So Marvin, I totally get, and yes, it could go one of 2 ways. It could go the very negative way where morale starts going down. But as the creative director, it's your job to make sure that you make the rest of the team understand and are aware that you're not out there chopping heads, and it was to plug a hole. Obviously the person was let go for a reason, and you work together to right the ship. And it was a very long, I was in there for almost 2 hours with them. I fielded every question that they had. They asked me everything. They were afraid the company was being sold. They were afraid, it was just like it was a slew of questions. And as long as you're upfront, you're honest, and you work with the rest of your team, they'll understand that what you did was for a reason, for a very good reason, and it may shape up the rest of the team. Now the guys might step up and say, he just let somebody go who's been here 10 years. I've been here 8 years. I better make sure my game is up there. And it worked out very well.
Yeah. If you're letting somebody go that's not doing their job well, man, my best friend could work right next to me. And if he sucks at his job, I'm going to know that. And while I might miss him, I work here out of pure and sheer self-interest. And while it may suck, it's not going to impact me that bad for a buddy to be gone. You got to remember, the last time you had a job, the way that you thought about that place, it wasn't like, sure, you might have a little ownership and you might be invested in it, but ultimately it's a job, right? And you're there for the job. So, JD, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. You want to have a follow-up meeting. Whenever you let somebody go, it needs to be talked about, because if you keep things secret, something, you can't control that conversation. You can't control what's going on, and you can't communicate with your team what actually happened. So, I would say that 9 times out of 10, it's not going to impact morale in a big way, unless it's like totally unjustified and you're just a sleaze ball. But yeah, and there's nothing better or nothing more motivating than seeing somebody else lose their job. Because JD said the rest of the guys like, maybe we need to step up a little bit, and that's totally the truth. Totally the truth. Like I said, if my best friend was let go, I'd be like, ooh, maybe I need to keep my office just a little cleaner.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to throw it over to Revens now.
Hey guys, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
This is the
awesome.
first time you've joined that I've actually been able to see you.
I think so. Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Am I saying your name right? Is it Revens or Ravens?
Revens.
Revens. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
So
Awesome.
how did you find the material?
Well, because I just transit my freelancer career to a studio,
Mm-hmm.
and I literally just started a studio like 2 months ago.
Nice.
So I only had one partner, and we didn't even have like a formal team. We didn't have any system built up. We don't have a stabilized client base yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the chance to get to fire people, hiring people, nothing.
Gotcha.
No intern. So I really don't have anything to say about this module.
Why no interns?
Because myself, I can't even figure out like what I should do. I'm like kind of overwhelming in the task of starting a business. So, luckily for me, I actually start my business nearby my master's school.
Mm-hmm.
So my school just told me I can always go back and hiring interns from summers. But the thing is, I can't even manage myself, and I'm afraid of manage intern too. So that's why I don't know what to tell them to do.
Yeah, I get it.
So maybe after a year.
Maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow? I'm afraid.
Why are you afraid?
Well, because I don't even have my income is not, my monthly income is not even, I forgot the word, even able to cover my costs right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that somebody would work for you for free?
Yes, I think so, because I worked intern for free before, like last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I know.
You don't have to force anybody to work for you for free. And the nice thing in our trade is that we have this apprenticeship thing. And are you in the US?
Yes, in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. So there's weird laws for every other type of profession, but for us, because we can train people on the job and because it's a craft, we have this wonderful thing called an apprenticeship, and it's totally legal and it's totally beneficial to both parties. So let me ask you something. Why are you holding the young people of the world back from working with Ravens?
Because I just feel like I'm not ready.
You're holding them down. You got your boot on their career and you're just holding them back. You're like, no, you're not gonna do it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think it's a tricky situation right now. I'm having is I was a graphic designer, and I'm actually starting a live production studio with my partner.
Cool.
And right now I'm managing the back end of the company, try to build our system and talk to clients. And my partner did the video parts. And I'm not be honest, I'm not too familiar with what this video production world. So if I'm hiring people in, well, probably just asking them to like call clients and stuff. And I'm not sure if this is the right thing to do because we are video production company.
Okay.
And I feel bad.
It's not bad.
Not bad?
Not bad. I don't have time. I don't have time to do the verbal judo with you. To walk you through your limiting belief. I just kind of want to smash this for you. It's like there are so many college kids that just want experience, even in the business track or the sales track or the marketing track, or, if they had a chance to interact with a real life client, they would just kill for it. And I know that in the beginning you said, you're having trouble even managing yourself. There's nothing that will sharpen that ability than having an 18-year-old just sitting like looking at you like, what do I do now, boss? You instantly learn how to figure out tasks and delegate. So
yeah, you're right.
I would recommend it. I mean, one thing that you could start doing, something that we recommended in the lecture or the Q&A, is to start tracking your time minute by minute. It sucks. The first time I did it, it was like, I'm never doing this again, but I did it for, I think, 3 days straight. And I just recorded what I was doing every single minute of the day. And then I assigned a value to all those things. And I realized that I was spending so much time resizing artwork and sending it out to clients. So it's like packaging comes in, small tweak, typo over here, fixing that over there. And it was just, like JD said, it was the grunt work. And here I was, I was charging $100 an hour at that point. But I realized that, it was just totally inefficient for me to be doing this work. And I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that you're doing right now that is equally inefficient.
Yeah, I feel like I would say 50% of the time is doing inefficient work. Yes, it's not like a value to like what's the value of the time. I can feel that. One question though.
Yeah.
I do have an office, but I only have like office for 2 people. So if I want to hire an intern, I just hire them like remotely or something.
It depends. I always like to work with people close, especially if they're going to be back end kind of office. I would recommend somebody that you can bring in person.
I see.
A remote intern, that's going to be tough. And I don't know that they would get value out of that. You know what I mean? The value is being around you and being able to learn and being in an office environment. So, I mean, is there a corner that you can squeeze a little desk in?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I can figure out. If I really want to hire one, I can always figure out. But I just kind of torn between hire them in on-site or remotely. Okay.
I would always recommend on-site for interns, especially. When you're working with freelancers, totally, you do what you need to do. Remote is great for a lot of freelancing. But for interns, because they're there for the purpose of osmosis, to just suck everything in and like absorb, that's what they want to do. And that's, kind of the value on their side. When I hired my first intern, guy's name was Brian, and I found him on a Craigslist ad, and he shows up to the interview and like long hair, beard that was like totally not trimmed. It was like huge. He's wearing like a flannel shirt and cut off jeans, and sat down and we went through his portfolio. His portfolio was pretty good. And I was like, dude, you're 25 years old. Why are you looking for an internship? Especially at, I think it was like $8 an hour at that point. He was like, listen, man, I'm waiting on my settlement to come in and I just need to get back in the industry. And he told me this whole story about how he wanted to like get out of design after college. And so he went to work for a reclaimed lumber place. And so he was the guy that was like pulling down barns, and then they would go and like plane the lumber, and he would have the opportunity to build cool stuff. But then due to like crazy work conditions, he planed 2 of his fingers off.
Ooh.
So he was like, I'm just waiting on my settlement, and I really want to get back in and have some experience. And I was just like, okay, great. And it was this clear exchange of value. Here was a designer that should be earning, $50,000, $60,000 a year because he went to design school, his portfolio was good, but he believed that he had been out of the industry for so long that he wanted a very low pressure way back in. And I was in a loft, we worked out of my house for the first 6 months, I think. My wife was she was just pregnant at the time. So he would get there in the morning. She was like, hi. And then she would go throw up, and it was just one big space. It was a total mess, but the guy got value out of it. He's now working successfully somewhere in Richmond as a senior designer somewhere. And for me, I was able to learn delegation, and I was able to learn, what it meant to hire somebody. And I got so much great work out of him. And so it's just a win all the way around, even though it's all totally messed up and messy and weird and all those things, right? So
yeah,
you have an office and you're 12 steps ahead of where I was. So give these young guys a shot.
Okay. I will try.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. See, we got a couple minutes. Anybody have any other questions or feedback or things to talk about? I don't know.
I have a question that
Go for it.
came up. It's not a part of the delegation module, but I was listening to the pricing module again, and my question, a lot of weird questions come up when you listen back the second and third time, and something didn't click when you initially were going through the class. And my question that I came up with tonight as I was driving home was, when you are in the diagnosing phase and you drop a price anchor, whatever the price anchor may be, and then you're going through the pricing strategy and you're doing the future desired state. Let's just say you're going over that whole thing, and then you come up with X amount of dollars. Right after that lesson, after we went through that whole value-based pricing, Chris showed us a proposal that had discovery on there. So if you say this job is going to cost $50,000 to $20,000, and is discovery totally separate from that? When do you bring up a discovery or strategy session? Because then the client's going to say, well, you told me it was going to be $50,000 to $20,000, but now you're charging me $10,000 for a strategy. Where does that come into the equation? Is that a part of that price anchor that you throw out, or is it totally separate?
Some of these puzzle pieces don't go together. So it doesn't always click in. When we're talking about value-based pricing, if you anchor, that kind of totally defeats the purpose of working through the value-based pricing, strategy in the beginning.
Right. Yes.
Future state. So you literally can't anchor if your strategy is to go in with value-based pricing. But after you work out the value-based pricing, after you work out the desired future state and you have a number to reference, it's really just it should be so large that it covers whatever you need to do. And,
okay, then if you don't go value-based pricing, let's say you do the inputs or outputs.
Yeah, so price anchoring is typically great with both, because you can estimate the number of hours it's going to take by past experience or whatever. And then if you go outputs, I'm a big fan of a blend between outputs and value-based pricing. The way I like to do it is I like to drive a range, an anchor range, based on a certain percentage of the company's revenue. So if I'm looking at a $30 million company, 10% of that $30 million every single year is spent on marketing. And so depending on the importance of the job, let's say they're an e-commerce company and they want us to redo their e-commerce website. Well, that should take a significant portion of the marketing budget. So I'll, throw an anchor 1 million to 500,000. So I'm kind of like blending the two. And I know that for us to do a website, even an e-commerce site, that's plenty of budget for us. So I know that like, even though we do the discovery, even though we do all that kind of under that umbrella, it's enough to cover.
In that instance, it is.
Yeah.
But what if you're just doing, mom and pop shop, which maybe a small franchise store, your burger joint, okay? Mm-hmm. Your burger joint, Chris says it's going to be, if you didn't do value-based pricing, and it was, whatever this range was, do you put in to that range the cost of discovery, or do you have that as a separate conversation? But it wouldn't even make sense. I would get pissed off if somebody said to me, how much are you going to cost? And I say, I'll do your logo for $10,000. And they say, okay, great. And then you say, okay, well, we'll have a strategy session. That's going to cost $5,000.
Yeah, no,
the client would be pissed.
Yeah, the anchor, the bracket, whatever number you throw down over the phone, it always includes discovery.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay, great. That's good to know. So,
and the beauty about discovery, and in the free content on YouTube and in a lot of like conversations, we started to teach people and train people to say, let's do this discovery, session. Mm-hmm. But I cannot tell you how many times I want to say discovery channel. Don't know why, but it's like, I find myself, let's do this discovery session, and then we'll figure out the budget and the scope. And, for us, that's like $50,000 to $100,000 at this point. And clients are always wondering like, oh man, are we going to get through discovery? And then you're going to like
find out it's way too much. Right.
Yeah. So at that point, after a while, I just stopped doing that. And I handle a lot of like the new business around here. And it's just like, listen, we know for a website, it's going to be at least $100,000. We know that, right? We could probably dip as low as 70, but we know that we're going to be in that ballpark. So I'm comfortable dropping a range that includes the website and discovery if that's what they're looking for. And that's just being clear and transparent with the client. I'm not a value-based pricing ninja by any stretch of the imagination. And to be quite honest, our clients that come to us are rarely people with enough power that would know what the value of this thing is. Because we work with such huge companies that these guys are just like, hey, listen, I have a budget. I don't want to show you what my budget is because I want to hear from you, but I have a budget. And for me, it's like figuring out if that budget is enough. So outputs is really more my game. And it always includes that discovery session.
That's perfect. So I'll just remember that for, when I go into a job that it will cover discovery, and that's not a separate conversation. That will be a part of the conversation. Part of this fee is for discovery to find out exactly what it is that you need. And then you can go into,
And the beautiful thing, I use discovery as like an upsell, because it's like discovery is a part of any creative process.
You're just getting charged for it now. You're charging for it now.
You're charging for it, right? So you charge for it, and then during the discovery process, if you're running core, if you're running, a facilitation system that allows you to talk about the user kind of more organically than just in reference to the deliverable that you're promised to make. But if you talk to them about the user journey, hopefully you'll come up with a whole bunch of other touch points that you can bid out. So I use discovery as like an exploration tool to add stuff to the ticket that's already been created and signed off on. And it works great, right? Because we'll come in at like a $200,000 project. By the time we're done with discovery, hopefully we'll be at 3.
But do you get that 3? Is that extra 100 a part of this new project, or do you finish what you already said? We will do $200,000. You get this. During discovery, you find $100,000 more. Is that a separate project after the first one's delivered?
It depends on what it is. I mean, typically it's just added deliverables.
And so people are okay with that, just spending another $100,000. Well,
totally.
I guess because during the discovery you say, "Hey, look, you're going to need this," or "This is something that should be a part of this whole package. Right. We need to add this on." And then at that point, it's their choice to say whether or not they want it or not.
I'll share an unsuccessful example. We're working on a project with a commercial real estate person or commercial real estate company that has a massive space. I mean, this space is like, It is bigger than any building that I've ever been in China, just sheer interior size. So it's just, it is massive. It's not tall, but like, it's like factory warehouse kind of thing where it's just, I have never been in a space that is enclosed that's this large.
Wow.
And so we were brought on to do the identity, the website, and the marketing collateral. You know, this is a $200,000 project. It is what it is. It's kind of end to end. We do this all the time. During discovery, we realized that in order to get the brokers there, because the brokers were so tired of seeing new developments that are 5-6 years out, we needed to do just, you know, something special. And so the idea that we almost sold them on was a drone race.
In that giant space?
In the giant space. So it was like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if we had a bunch of drones and a bunch of VR headsets to set up? And, you know, because we wanted to communicate how large the space was. So it's like, it's large enough to hold a drone race inside the space. And you're like, you know, you have all these professional pilots that are like piloting these, weaving in, maybe something like a crash happens. It'd be super cool. And, you know, it almost went through. I think it got stopped in like legal or something. Yeah, but it was a cool idea, and that would have been a $50,000 ticket just for our services. And then, you know, with all the rest of the stuff where it's like, you know, the drone pilot's fees, you know, all the equipment, setup, by the end of the day, it would have been a $100,000 thing.
Wow.
But, you know, that was just an idea that we had during discovery that, you know, if we tacked that onto the thing, it would have almost doubled our engagement. So that's what I use discovery session is it's that last minute like upsell, like, hey, let's add a whole bunch of stuff on.
But it's good to know that should be a part of your pricing and that's what I was a little unsure or confused about, is if it was sold separately or that gets rolled into your bid, and that's huge. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it, unless anybody's got any burning questions.
We can still reach you in the usual channels, right?
Never. Yeah.
You asked if I would help, and I wrote you back.
Yes, it has been an insane week. Sorry.
That's fine. I just want to let you know that I did respond back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So for future reference, I was vetoed. We're going to keep the group open. So yay.
Hey, awesome.
Yeah,
You were vetoed. You didn't want to?
No, I did not want to. Because we're going to have a bunch of these, right? And yes. I didn't want to have like a whole bunch of freaking groups open up. But I was vetoed. So it is what it is. You guys get to keep your group. The Slack channel will always be available for you guys. And then now the Facebook group will as well. So awesome. Next week, the Q&A is going to happen, but it's probably not going to be on a Tuesday. I'm going to put out a poll with the details to see, you know, you guys pick your time. Chris is just going to be there for an hour and a half to answer any questions that you have. So
great.
Take advantage of that. And then I'm also going to be sending you guys a feedback survey. I need your addresses because we're going to send you t-shirts, and we'll email you the certificate of completion, which will be our first certificate of completion for any future endeavor.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I know Matt wasn't feeling too well, and I hope that we get to see him again. And you guys have been awesome.
Thanks.